I just can't stop talking about this. Super Smash Bros. For the 3DS was one of my favorite growing up. This was one of my childhood Smash Bros. I started playing Smash Bros. Actually on the GameCube with Melee. I was on the N64 kid. I kind of missed out on that generation. And so the Melee was really my kind of entrance into the series. The 3DS one is such a unique one because easily one of the most forgotten games in the series. It does so many things right that I wanted to go back and kind of just reminisce over what made this game so special. Oh, look at that title screen going through the character roster on the bottom. Super Smash Bros. 3DS is really a miracle of a game. I think up to this point, Smash Bros. On a portable handheld would have been so compromised that it does feel like it was the right time with the 3DS to try it out. I couldn't imagine a DS version of Smash Bros. Even though, yeah, I could have probably done like a 2D sprite-based version. I don't know. I start thinking about games like Super Mario 64, DS, and yeah, that game's beloved, but it has some rough edges, and I don't think Smash Bros. Would have been the best for that. But you know, that's still up for interpretation. But looking on this home screen, we see plenty of things to do. So of course you got typical Smash mode. It's nice to see like the items that they had in Smash 3DS. Obviously the Smash Ball Assist Trophy, the different Pokeballs, things such as, you know, Dragoon, Daybreak, lots of cool returning items, and some really neat new things like the special flag and the Ore Club. Smash 3DS came out a few months before Smash Wii U did. And so there was this time that Smash 3DS was the main Smash Bros. To play. I remember having a lot of hype to Smash Bros. 3DS and Wii U's release, specifically with the character reveals. This was the game that took a big jump in terms of third-party characters being added into Smash. Yeah, Brawl had Sonic and Snake. Sonic was a shoo-in, I think, since honestly the very beginning of the series. Snake, yeah, a weird pick. I mean, but taking a second to look at these newcomers, I mean, we have Rosalina and Luma. Obviously, the Galaxy games are some of the highest praised games in the Mario franchise, so, you know, no duh that Rosalina would make it in. Bowser Jr., another iconic Mario character to make it in from this game. It's really neat that all of his alternate costumes are the other Koopalings. It's really interesting that he plays in a cart, and all of his moveset is based on him being in his floating little vehicle. I believe this is the point where they fully separated Zelda and Sheik, so they don't have the transform mechanic anymore. They're each their own character. Similarly with Samus and Zero Suit Samus, I believe that's where that happened. Pit was a returning character from Brawl, but now he brought along with him Palutena, which was a really neat character to get in the series. She obviously had a big role in Kid Icarus Uprising. I think that's really why she's here with that, and the fact that Sakurai directed that game. So it kind of makes sense that she kind of got added. In terms of Fire Emblem, we got a new Fire Emblem rep. I actually got two new Fire Emblem reps. The first one was Robin from Fire Emblem Awakening. Robin, I really like Robin actually as an addition because Robin plays very different than, you know, your typical Fire Emblem characters, you know, your Marth, your Roy, your Ike, and has, you know, a magic component, which is really neat. And also is still a sword fighter. I don't know, it's unique enough to justify, you know, being in. The other new Fire Emblem character was Lucina, and she's, you know, this is before they had the term of Echo Fighter for characters, so she would go on in Smash Ultimate to be labeled an Echo Fighter of Marth, because she's heavily based on Marth's gameplay. But Lucina, yeah, fun addition, also from Awakening. I've not played Awakening. I know that Awakening is one of the best games in the whole franchise. It's the game that saved the Fire Emblem franchise from, you know, its demise. Kind of brought it back into, you know, relevancy and gave it a chance to succeed. Little Mac, that was a really cool add-on. You know, obviously classic Punch-Out. Having Little Mac added into the game, you know, it just gives a nice retro representation alongside another character we're going to see in a little bit. It's also really cool, the skins they gave him. He has the wireframe versions of himself. Also the hooded version of himself as well. And so it's really, really cool to have Little Mac here. Obviously Punch-Out is an iconic game in the arcades and, you know, on the NES, you know, SNES, Super Punch-Out. So it's really great to have Little Mac here. From Brawl to Smash Wii U and 3DS, Pokemon Trainer was cut. So Pokemon Trainer, I believe, was cut because of the 3DS's limitations. Same thing with Ice Climber not being, you know, a returning character on this roster. Having the character transformation between, you know, Charizard, Ivysaur, and Squirtle, like you had in Brawl, having that on a 3DS might have been kind of pushing the limit with what the 3DS is capable of. I believe that's also what happened with Zelda and Sheik and, you know, Samus and Zero Suit Samus. So they just brought back Charizard. I would say if you're going to bring back one of them, Charizard is the one to bring back. He's definitely the tankiest out of the three. It's a shame because, you know, all three of those Pokemon played very different. You know, they had different weight classes. So, you know, you were able to change the way you play based on the character that you were using at any given time. But if you're going to have one of them, yeah, Charizard's the main one to have. So it's nice that he at least got to return and had a little moment to, you know, himself. Ultimately, we'd get Pokemon Trainer back. So this would kind of be a part of the game that was, you know, I wouldn't say forgotten, but, you know, it's easy to forget that Charizard was the only one to return in this, you know, set of games. In terms of a new Pokemon rep, Greninja, it's really nice to have Greninja here. He's from Pokemon X and Y. He's one of the starters. It makes total sense to have him here. Around this time, I believe, is when, you know, he was really big in the Pokemon anime as well. And so Greninja feels like one of the, you know, just a shoo-in to be in the Smash roster. In terms of some retro characters, remember, we also have Duck Hunt. Duck Hunt is as retro as it gets. I mean, you know, the NES, Nintendo Entertainment System, or the Famicom in Japan, you know, Duck Hunt was one of the hallmark titles on that series or on that console. And so having Duck Hunt here makes total sense. Having him together with the actual Duck from Duck Hunt, you know, they play really interestingly. They use those mechanics of the light gun from the NES to, you know, kind of attack, you know, other opponents. So it's really cool to have them here. Villager from Animal Crossing. I mean, kind of crazy it took to this point to get Villager in Animal Crossing. I think what really helped is New Leaf was truly a huge game on the 3DS. Animal Crossing seems to have always been a really big franchise. I don't know why New Leaf out of all of them. New Leaf's a good game. I've not played a lot of it, but New Leaf's, I know it's a good game. And so, you know, out of sheer quality, it makes sense that people that have grew up with different Animal Crossing games from the DS, the Wii, the GameCube, it makes sense that they would kind of all converge on a more modern platform eventually. This is before even Switch with New Horizons. So yeah, I think Villagers are really warranted new addition. This one's just weird. Wii Fit Trainer, it's so stupid that I love it. Yeah, Wii Fit was a big thing on the Wii. I think this is a really good ironic and unironic inclusion because in terms of Nintendo's library, it makes sense to have the Wii Fit Trainer here. Wii Fit sold so well. It was part of, you know, the casual side of the Wii. Wii generation was a weird one because Nintendo went really hard in the casual direction, and some of the hardcore fans might not have felt as, you know, pleased. But Wii Fit Trainer was a big part of that Wii generation, and so I think she totally deserves to have a spot here. Continuing on with, you know, what would be labeled as Echo Fighters in the future, Dark Pit. He's basically the same as Pit, just changes some of the gameplay. Yeah, Dark Pit, you know, same thing. Sakurai made Kid Icarus Uprising. Makes sense that he would add another Kid Icarus Uprising character. Shulk. At this point, Shulk was, Xenoblade, obviously part of Project Rainfall. You know, if you're not aware of that, that was, you know, the 3 games, Xenoblade Chronicles, The Last Story, and Pandora's Tower on the Wii. They weren't getting released in North America originally. I believe they already had a Europe translation, so, you know, it was already translated into English. They just had to publish it over in the US, North America. And, you know, eventually, Nintendo listened. And so, you know, Project Rainfall, those games came out in the US and North America. Shulk was the most relevant out of all 3 of those, you know, the characters from those games, with Xenoblade being easily the standout hit from the 3. So yeah, Shulk being here, he plays very interesting with, you know, with his Monado, the sword he uses, and he's able to kind of change the way he plays based on using his special. And so you can change based on like speed, jump, defense, you know, smash power. So it's really neat. I think it makes sense for him to be here, especially knowing that Xenoblade would go on to become one of Nintendo's, you know, easily one of the biggest franchises, let alone, you know, RPGs in general. And then we see a really, you know, an iconic trio of gaming icons. Pac-Man, Mega Man, and Sonic. Obviously, Sonic was already in Smash Brawl, but having all these icons here together next to Mario, it's truly something special. I remember when they announced Mega Man, he was one of the first characters. He might have been the first character. He was either the first or one of the first characters they revealed. I mean, his reveal trailer is so good. And then having, you know, all of his moves be based on the different abilities from, you know, his villains that he's fought, having his final smash be, you know, different Mega Mans coming to join and help him, firing, you know, energy blasts at your opponent. So cool. Pac-Man, this is based on, you know, his 3D games, Pac-Man World, from that GameCube era. Again, really iconic. His moveset pays homage to not just his games, but honestly other classic arcade games like Galaga. And so it's really nice to see these gaming icons make the cut, if you will, for Smash. Especially at this point, Smash 3DS and Wii U. Another one, kind of like the Wii Fit Trainer, the Miis. The Miis got added in this game. And you had the 3 classes of Miis: Sword Fighter, Gunner, and Brawler. I mean, again, Miis were so big in the Wii generation that, yeah, they totally deserve to be here. It makes it really fun, too, that you get to customize your own character. Having a customizable character in Smash is a really novel concept. I think it makes sense to have it be the Miis that do that. But it's a really fun add-on, and, I mean, you can't blame them for adding them. Then we have DLC. So this was a time where DLC, in Nintendo, that wasn't the most common thing. But by the time we got to Smash Bros., it was becoming a little more. I believe Mario Kart had already released when 3DS version of Smash came out. I'm not sure if the first wave of DLC for that came out yet before this game or after. But this was the time that Nintendo was becoming more familiar with releasing DLC for games. And we had 7 DLC characters for Smash on the 3DS and Wii U. We had Mewtwo returning from Melee. He was cut from Brawl. I'm not even sure why he was cut from Brawl, because, I mean, he's a pretty iconic Pokemon. We also have Lucas from Brawl. I believe Lucas is from Mother 3, which was never released in North America. Actually, I never got an official English translation, I believe, so it wasn't released in Europe as well. So Lucas was always a weird, kind of like Japanese-only inclusion in the original Brawl. So having him back, though, he was a fan favorite from Brawl. Kind of similarly plays to Ness. But it's great having him back. Same with Roy, also cut after Melee. He was cut from Brawl, kind of replaced with Ike at the time. And so I loved Roy. Roy was probably my main character in Melee. Having him, just his fire, sword, his special attack, so satisfying to hit. And so great to have him back. And then with this DLC, they added some of the most iconic characters in gaming history. First off, with Ryu, talk about fighting game representation. This is the fighting game guy. This is where they introduced that concept of having a character play almost like he is from a Street Fighter game. Well, he is from a Street Fighter game, but like he's in a Street Fighter game, where, even in a one-on-one, they had that really cool detail where he would always turn to face his opponent, like they would in games like Street Fighter. So it's really cool to have him here. He really represents, fighting games as a whole, and so it's really great to have him. Another insane character. I don't think anyone thought this was possible at this time, but Cloud from Final Fantasy VII. Insane inclusion. It's so cool to have a character like Cloud. Just like, Ryu is the fighting game character, Cloud is the RPG or JRPG character. So having these back to back, Smash Bros. For 3DS and Wii U meant business when they were adding characters, until they added Corrin. I don't know why. I know why they added Corrin. Fates was, I don't know if it was upcoming at this point or a recently released Smash Brothers game. But, Corrin, I really liked the Fates games when I played them. I played them on the 3DS, kind of when they came out. I'm not going to go back, I played them in years, so they might not have aged as well. But having that dynamic of choosing your path is really cool. Choosing your path for your story in the game is really cool. Kind of weird that you make that decision before you buy the game instead of in the game, like you would in like Three Houses later on. But he's a cool enough character. He plays differently than other Fire Emblem characters, so it gets a pass. And then Bayonetta. This was basically the point where Bayonetta was a Nintendo franchise. Nintendo saved the Bayonetta series. It's the whole reason Bayonetta 2 got made was because of Nintendo. And Bayonetta was the supposed winner of the Smash Fighters ballot that happened around this time. So you could vote on what characters you wanted to see included in Smash. Bayonetta was surely not the actual number 1 pick, but it was the number 1 most realistic pick that they could do. And so it's really cool that, this character that was kind of recently steeped into that Nintendo, culture, being added as the final DLC character. I do want to take some time to look at the stages, because I remember that Smash 3DS has some exclusive stages compared to Smash on Wii U. You also see right here it says X button has the Omega form. So this was when they were enabling anything to be an Omega form stage, which means it was basically just Final Destination. Smash Ultimate would kind of go on to add the Battlefield mode, if I remember correctly, for any stage to make it like Battlefield. But of course we have, speaking of Battlefield, Final Destination, 3D Land. One thing to note about these stages on Smash for 3DS is that they take a lot of influence from the handheld games from these franchises. So like, for example, 3D Land is based on Super Mario 3D Land that came out on the 3DS. Golden Plains is based on New Super Mario Bros. 2. We have Mario Kart 7's Rainbow Road. So there's a lot of influence from the handheld games of all these different franchises in Smash Bros. A lot of these stages would actually also be locked to 3DS, so they wouldn't be in the Wii U version, but they wouldn't come back in Smash Ultimate either. So some of these, like we just said, Rainbow Road would be one of those. We have Paper Mario. This is probably based on Sticker Star, I'd imagine. Mushroomy Kingdom, Jungle Japes, Gerudo Valley. Some of these are pretty, iconic based on other stages from the series. This one's a big one, Spirit Train. Spirit Train's one that I would have thought would have came back in Smash Ultimate, considering this is based on Toon Link. One of his games, in this case it's a handheld game, Spirit Tracks. Yeah, it's a little weird this one's never come back. It's a really neat design, and I think it's fair to have something based on Toon Link if you're going to have him as a separate character. Brinstar from Metroid returns. We have Yoshi's Island. This is probably based on Yoshi's New Island on the 3DS. We have Dreamland on the Game Boy, which is super cool to have this here for Kirby. Classic Corneria. Unova Pokemon League, so at this point, some of the most recent Pokemon games were Pokemon Black and White. Interesting, though, that they took a stage based on Black and White, which were games released on the DS. At this time, I'm not sure if Pokemon had released on the 3DS yet. I want to say they had. So it's interesting that they didn't release a stage based on that on the 3DS. But, it is what it is. And after I said that, Prison Tower, that is based on Pokemon X and Y, so I take it all back. So it's really cool that they actually have both of those represented there, so I didn't know that. Mute City for F-Zero. We have Magicant for, I believe that's Earthbound. Arena Ferox, I want to say that's based on Fire Emblem Awakening. Again, a huge game for Nintendo on 3DS, so that's really good to have representation for that here. I mean, if you're going to have handheld games, I mean, the original handheld was the Game & Watch, so having that represented in a stage Flat Zone 2, you can see the design right there too, is based on one of the Game Watches. That's really cool to have. Reset Bomb Fortress, this looks like it's based on Kid Icarus Uprising. WarioWare Inc., a lot of the WarioWare games have released on handhelds, so it's nice to have some representation there. Ooh, Distant Planet. So Pikmin historically was not a handheld franchise. I believe Hey Pikmin on the 3DS came out, I want to say after Smash Bros. But it's nice that there is a Pikmin stage here, obviously because Pikmin's, a pretty decent sized franchise for Nintendo. But to know that they would get a handheld version of one of their games on here, it's nice to have that in hindsight. Tortimer Island, based on Animal Crossing. I'm going to assume that's from New Leaf, but I could be wrong. Boxing Ring for Little Mac, kind of a classic. Gar Plain. This is actually another really neat one because Xenoblade would go on to get a port from the Wii to the new Nintendo 3DS line of systems, so wouldn't be working on one of these bad boys, the Nintendo 3DS XL, only the new line of systems, and so having that here, kind of a neat foreshadow of what would come out in the future. We have some retro representation with Balloon Fight, kind of a classic, a big NES game. Was also a sequel, I believe, for Balloon Fight, Balloon Kid. I want to say came out on the Game Boy, so that could also be a little nod to the handheld history of that. Living Room, this is a big one. Nintendogs, one of Nintendo's biggest handheld games ever. I mean, it was one of the launch titles for the Nintendo 3DS, Nintendogs and Cats. So having a stage here, I mean, totally justified for this kind of game. Find Me, I believe this is based on Miitopia. Miitopia was a 3DS game originally before it got ported to the Switch. So it's nice having a stage based on the Miis, and also a game that came out for the 3DS. Same with Tomodachi Life. That was a really big 3DS franchise using the Miis, using that AI voiceover to kind of make them very charming. So it's nice to have that here as well. PictoChat number 2. PictoChat all the way back to the Nintendo DS. I mean, iconic app. All of these really deserve representation here, but it's nice that they really took some time to get some deep cuts in there for Nintendo's handheld history. Green Hill Zone, Classic Sonic, Wily Castle, that's for Mega Man. Of course, I believe that one's also in the Wii U version, so we're good there. Pac Maze, for Pac-Man, this is a way better stage On the 3DS, then, what we got for, I believe, for Wii U, which was Pac-Land. Who cares about Pac-Land? Pac-Maze? I mean, that's just perfect for Pac-Man. So we love that representation there. Then we have this second page. Some of these might have been free DLC, like Dreamland 64 might have been on a DLC stage. I want to say it might have been a free DLC stage. So we'll take it, I guess. I'm going to skip this one for a second because the other one for Duck Hunt, I want to say was also maybe a free DLC stage. But both retro games, nice to have them here. Big one, Suzaku Castle. And so the third-party characters were the only ones, I believe, to get a actual stage for their DLC. So Suzaku Castle, that's from Street Fighter for Ryu. We have Midgar for Cloud, obviously, from Final Fantasy VII. And then we have the Umbra Clock Tower for Bayonetta. Really cool that they were adding these new stages. Each of them are pretty unique. I believe Midgar has some special gimmicks to it. In Umbra Clock Tower, I'm not sure. It's been a long time since I played this stage. But yeah, it's a really solid lineup of stages. Kind of based on a lot of different parts of, gaming culture and gaming history. So, I can't complain from this lineup. So that's Smash. I want to look at Smash Run. This was the 3DS exclusive mode. It's a really interesting mode. It takes on kind of some DNA from Kirby Air Ride City Trial with, having to collect stats. Bringing in some of those, features from Melee and Brawl, having the adventure modes from those games, kind of combines those together into this really interesting mode where you're going around a space loaded with enemies, and trying to collect different stats, and then level up yourself enough so that once the time finishes, you're going to have a beefed up battle against, the other competitors. It's a really neat mode. I think this mode is worth more than kind of the exclusive modes in Smash for Wii U. Really the only things I could think of was Master Orders and Crazy Orders. I think this is a little more compelling. So yeah, that's a really cool mode. You'll also see right here where it says custom. A big thing that they did in Smash for 3DS and Wii U is they added the ability to give your character custom moves. I know I picked Palutena because she was like the, poster child of this when she was first revealed. They showed her having so many different moves. And so it's really cool that you can kind of customize how, each character plays and give them different moves. I don't believe this came back in Smash Ultimate, so that also adds another layer of, something interesting to come back to with these games, especially 3DS. Really, in a lot of ways, I feel like Smash 3DS can almost kind of coexist alongside Smash Ultimate as this different take on the whole franchise. You see, there's different boosts that you can give to your character. So it adds a lot, even different equipment, changes your stats. You'll see right here. So really cool, unique facet of Smash for 3DS. Of course, it's not a Smash Brothers game without being able to look back over the years, all these different types of music from all these games, from Smash Bros, but of course from these different series that are represented. I don't even remember having these checked off. I guess these were just some songs I really liked when I was playing on the 3DS. So that's really cool to actually go back and see these. It looks like I liked the Ocarina of Time medley, Brinstar Depths. Anything else? Looks like mainly those three. So this is always a fun addition to a Smash Brothers game, is being able to go back and listen to the music. And you know what? It's not going to sound the greatest because it's on a 3DS, but adds to some of the charm. So that's Smash Run. We have online. Unfortunately, the 3DS's online network has been discontinued, so that's just kind of null and void. But the ability to play Smash Bros. On a handheld online is incredible. It was incredible from the get-go. And so, obviously not much to say about it these days. It was nice that, I know for sure on the Wii, I'm going to assume on the 3DS as well, they had those two different modes, for Fun or for Glory. For Glory was basically, 1v1, Final Destination, no items, test a skill. And then for Fun was, up to 4 people with items, any stage. Nice to have those things separated. Very much appreciate it. So we have games and more. Under the solo category, we have classic mode. This classic mode is highly regarded as better than the Wii U classic mode. The Wii U classic mode was like that weird game board that you would have to move your piece to and decide who you want to fight. Classic mode, it's very simple. You'll see on the bottom screen, You get different paths. Those are based on who you end up fighting. You go on branching paths the whole time until you get to the end of the classic mode. Very good. All-star mode. You fight everyone. Obviously, the roster's bigger now. Includes more retro characters that are thrown in there throughout the years. It's based on the years the characters came out from their original games. So that's really neat. And then Stadium. So they had a couple different things, I believe. They had a multi-man smash, target blast, and the home run contest. So having some options there, some side modes. And then training, try out a fighter, see how it works. Pretty good stuff there. Ooh, the vault. We have trophies. You can look at a gallery of your different trophies, I believe. Yeah, so you have all these different trophies. Another nice thing to go back to, since Smash Ultimate, did away with the trophies and instead went with the spirit. So this is the last time we have trophies in the series as of now up to this point. So it's really nice that we kind of get these trophies here. I believe the trophies also kind of focus on handheld. So, like, for example, Ryoma is one of the characters from Fire Emblem Fates on the 3DS. So I think there's some more of these that are based on the handheld games as well. So that's really nice. You can look at them by series, by category. Very neat. Always love looking at the trophies. You can see your trophies all grouped together. You can buy more trophies. There's Trophy Rush, a little mini game to get more trophies. We love that album. Looking at the snapshots you've taken while playing. Replays that you save. Little sound bites, I believe. I think this is also just could be just random vocals or random things. Yeah, so if we see voices right here, so we can listen to some of these characters speak. Ooh, that was weird. There we go, that's Link. Have your records, have some tips. One thing, I'm assuming it's not on here. These are just different settings. I want to say that on Smash for Wii U, you get to see the character announcement trailers. Which those were those were so good, starting this generation of trailers for Smash Bros. I remember specifically it was the Palutena trailer, where it made me want a Smash Bros. Anime so bad, because it showed Link and Pit fighting in this beautiful art direction, and it just looks so good. Still to this day, it holds up so well, and it really just made me want a Smash Bros. Anime. Thinking about that, another thing I want to point out that we really didn't talk about is something I love about Smash 3DS is how it looks. Having the cell shading on the characters. I actually think this would be a really nice direction to bring back for anything post Smash Ultimate. I think changing the character roster pretty drastically, changing their movesets, and having an art style that kind of takes this really beautiful cell shading and does something similar to what 3DS did. I think, honestly, one, it gives it a lot of charm, and two, it helps distinguish not just this game right now, but anything that would come after if they use this kind of art style. So yeah, this is another thing I really wanted to point out. It's such a beautiful game on the 3DS. Look how well it runs. It's so smooth. Yeah, I mean, it's just so great to have. We have Street Pass. Street Pass had this little almost like a disc game that you can fling your characters at other characters in their discs. Yeah, Street Smash. Oh yeah. So this is Street Smash. Yeah, you're just charging, ramming into people. So we get some gold for playing. And then it brings us to the challenges. We complete some challenges. You get rewards. But the challenge panels, that's another big thing that we have here. This is also similar to other Smash games. You have different challenge panels. You get different rewards. Based on different challenges, so that's really nice to have that back as well. Oh, another thing in Games and More didn't talk about, but the amiibo support for the Smash Brothers games. Obviously, it was the FP, the figure player, and so you could train up a fighter of that character that you had the amiibo of, and they learn to fight based on your fight style, which is still really cool. That moved on to the Wii U game and the Smash Ultimate as well. So it's nice that we had it on here too. And the last thing I really want to cover is the fact that it was really cool that you could use the Smash 3DS to connect to a Wii U. And so you could actually use a 3DS as a controller for the Wii U. So that was really neat. I did that multiple times. So that was a really cool way that, the 3DS version interacts with the Wii U version. It's just really neat. You see that connection between those two games that, clearly there was so much love in these games from Sakurai and the whole development team. I believe this is when Bandai Namco started taking over. Well, I should say taking over, but starting to help develop Smash Bros. Games. So it's really nice just to see all of this and reminisce and go back to such a great game, and really a game that is truly underrated, and that I believe can just coexist with, you know, a game as jam-packed as Ultimate. It's obviously outdated in some ways, but in some other ways, it's, you know, it's preservation. It's just really well done. Too bad I can never play online again, though.